Story time! So have you ever heard of the legend of Dumaguete, aka Catalina of Dumaguete? So if you're not familiar with this place, Dumaguete is the capital town of the province of Negros Oriental in the Philippines. Like most great cities, Dumaguete has a long history and there are many myths and legends of its early days to help create its culture and character. Dumaguete is also known as the city of gentle people, although it is uncertain why, but the people who live there are renowned for their friendliness, making it a popular tourist destination. The name Dumaguete is thought to have come from the Visayan word dagit, meaning to snatch, possibly because it often fell victim to the pirates and raiders who robbed, killed, and enslaved the gentle people. Presented here is the folktale from its early days of Dumaguete, which tells the story of a strange girl with a faraway look in her eyes named Catalina, who was greatly loved by her people. So the author of this story is John Maurice Miller, along with other Philippine folklore stories published in 1904. Little is known of this author, but compiled, edited, and shared the collection of Philippine folktales, bringing stories to print that had previously only been around campfires. So the real author of these stories would be the people in Dumaguete themselves, who passed it on from generation to generation and is now internalized in media form by John Maurice Miller. So now that we know the background of the story, let's start. They would tell how many years ago there was an old man named Banog who made his living by making daily rounds of the town selling sweet waters from coconut tree. This was before the custom of making it into a strong liquor became widespread. Although Banog was poor, he was very much respected and considered a good man despite his poverty. Banog had a daughter named Catalina, and everyone did all they could to support them because the gentle people always supported one another the best they could. At the age of 16, Catalina was a very pretty and hardworking girl. She always wore a long white dress, which she kept spotlessly clean and in good repair. Everyone agreed she was very good of character, with a loving nature, and everyone liked her. But in some ways, she was a very strange girl. She very rarely spoke and was often found staring out over the sea, shading her eyes with one hand. At other times, she would suddenly stand tall while clasping her hands together and gaze into the sky, as though she could see something that no one else could. Because of these strange characteristics, the people believed that she had some mysterious powers of sight. There came a day when a fleet of ships carrying fierce pirate warriors appeared off the coast of Dumaguete. They came ashore and attacked the islanders, killing the men and enslaving the women. They even killed poor harmless Banog. They robbed and pillaged and rounded up all the women and placed them onto the ship to be sold as slaves. One of the prisoners was Catalina, and she sat silently in the bow of the ship, staring fixedly at the sky. Although her companions talked to her, trying to comfort her, she gave them no reply. Then, a very wonderful thing happened. Suddenly, Catalina stood upright and leaped from the bow into the water, but instead of sinking, she landed lightly on the sea's surface and walked over the waves back to her island home. Her captors were astounded, but made no attempts to stop or interfere with her because they feared her, so she reached the shore safely. There were still many survivors in the island who had escaped and hid into the forest, and when they saw Catalina return, they all came out to meet her. Although they greeted her warmly, she said nothing and gazed beyond them at the great thunder mountain of Talugtog. Then she walked straight toward it with her eyes fixed upon it. She walked through the burnt towns of Dumaguete, ignoring the horrors that lay around her, and strode steadfastly onwards. Now the thunder mountain of Talugtog was the home of a terrible beast called a sigbin.
Some say it's like a monstrous crow, but under its neck, two long legs protruded, similar to those of a grasshopper, which gave it the ability to leap a great distance without the need of using its wings. There are many conflicting descriptions because few people survived an encounter with one. Others say the sigbin is a nocturnal creature that can suck the blood from the shadows of its chosen victim, and it has a terrible smell that is often the sign of it being close by. At every opportunity, it would attack and kill humans, and sometimes it would venture out in search for its prey.
So people feared to go near the thunder mountain. Suddenly, Catalina stopped and raised her hands. A terrifying sound was heard. The sigbin came rushing down the mountainside, taking great leaps and screaming, leaped over the heads of the people and jumped across the sea to the island of Cebu, where it hid itself in the mountains. Seeing the panicked departure of the sigbin, the people ran up the thunder mountain looking for Catalina. To their sorrow, they found no sign of her, although they searched and searched. Dismayed, the people returned to their ruined town intent of rebuilding it and making it a fair and happy place to live again. They rebuilt Dumaguete, and several years later, a fleet of pirate ships again appeared off the coast. This time, the men were determined to fight and armed themselves with the poor weapons they could find. They gathered on the beaches to meet the invaders and told the women to take the children and the animals into the forest and hide. Although they were not warriors, the gentle people remembered their loved ones who had been killed and enslaved, and remembered their homes that that had been destroyed, and they fought fiercely. This time, they managed to drive the enemies back to the sea. But more pirate boats arrived in reinforcements and landed further along the shore, and they came around behind the defenders. The islanders eventually became outnumbered and exhausted and were facing defeat. Then something else wonderful happened. A cloud floated across the sky to form a bridge from the Thunder Mountain to Dumaguete, and down the bridge strode Catalina carrying in her hands a beehive. She stood before the astounded pirates holding the beehive high above her head, and then spoke magical words and placed it on the ground in front of them. She uttered a single word of command, and from the beehive, instead of bees, thousands of fierce little men swarmed out wielding deadly weapons. Instantly, they attacked the pirates and killed all of them. Then Catalina picked up the hive and returned over the cloud bridge without saying another word. The people came out of hiding and asked the little men many questions. They gave no answers and ran back to the forest of the Thunder Mountain, where they said to have lived to this day wild and free. Also, the Sigpin has never returned and is still said to haunt the mountains of the island of Cebu. All this happened a long time ago, for many years thereafter. During the anxious and frightening times, the old men and women of Dumaguete gathered their grandchildren around them. They would tell the story of Catalina, the strange girl with the faraway look in her eyes, who chased down the Sigbin and came down from the Thunder Mountains to save their ancestors from pirates. So this is why the gentle people love and remember Catalina, who is still said to reside on the Thunder Mountains of the Luzon. The end. So, what is the moral of this story? Well, my take on this is to be kind to everyone, even if they're somewhat unusual or of low status. Respect one another and good karma will come back to you. Because even in the story, it seems like Catalina didn't really care much for her surroundings. She didn't act like the hero nor the villain, but the people still think of her as a savior. So if they had not adored her so much, Catalina would probably not have done anything for the people. But that's my take on it, you know. If you want to find a Tagalog version, there's an animated one in YouTube. I'll link it down below. And also the article version of the story that I used in this video, if you want any reference. That's it. Thank you for watching. And if you have any thoughts about this story and what you think the lesson is, leave it down below and I'll see you next time. Thank you.